Now you're listening to Fantastic Formosa with Joh Abrams in Taipei. All right. We got another episode of Fantastic Formosa, and Judd is back to talk about his early days because he was in the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
And if you missed the previous episode, you would have learned a little bit about his experience in Taiwan. But since so many of you are in the Coast Guard here in Taiwan and listen to the program, he was in the U.S. Coast Guard from what years?
1983 to 1988.
Okay. So these are what we jokingly refer to in America as the Reagan years, Ronald Reagan. And Coast Guard for me as an American just seemed to be less adventuresome. I don't know why. I would disagree with that. I'm going to insult you completely. It wasn't.
We actually did stuff.
Yeah, that was the argument people made. You actually came in contact with, face to face with smugglers, drug smugglers, maybe.
That was a big part of the job then. Because that started, I guess in the Reagan era. I mean, so when I joined, it was and it still is. Search and rescue is the predominant.
SAR.
SAR.
Yeah,
exactly.
SAR. Yeah.
Is the primary mission.
Right.
But then right after the Reagan administration took over, the big push was to go after drug smugglers coming up from Colombia and other parts of South America.
There was a movie recently Tom Cruise was in. With him. What was that called? He's flying drugs up?
He was flying them over the Caribbean into New Orleans.
There were movies made, TV shows about this back in the 80s.
Right.
Miami Vice. Miami Vice, yeah. Made it sexy and interesting. But it's actually quite violent.
Yeah.
So you would, what made you interested in joining the Coast Guard?
I'm a big reader, and my authors that I love to read, one of whom was Joseph Conrad.
Oh, my God.
Who wrote Heart of Darkness, and among other things. And these stories, and again, I grew up in Kansas, the middle of the country. There was no water.
No rivers.
Very small rivers. Mark Twain was another.
It was my area.
Yeah,
Mississippi.
So all these adventure stories that I was reading really intrigued me, and I loved adventures. I was second day out of after graduating high school, I hitchhiked across the United States.
You're nuts.
I went all over the place.
Hitchhiking in America is one of the most dangerous things to do.
It wasn't as bad then, although there were four terrible things that happened to hitchhikers. I got very lucky. Yeah. I've been lucky all my whole life. I had a great experience doing it the summer of '79.
You hitchhiked around. You graduated high school or college?
Yeah, I graduated high school.
And your parents were all for this?
Well, I wouldn't say they were all for it. No, I wouldn't say that.
Sure, get in a car with strangers.
Yeah, but
truck drivers.
And I would catch rides with people I knew as well.
Oh.
So, but literally, I just got on the road the next day, and first stop was southern Texas, and then Colorado, and then Tennessee, and then up to the Northwest, down the West Coast.
Okay.
So I saw America, and I loved that adventure. And so then a few years later, I was looking for that next adventure in college. I went to college, but I just felt itchy. I had travel fever.
What college was this?
I went to the University of Kansas.
Well, that's a famous school.
It is famous. Yeah, they're well known, especially for their basketball program right now.
What was it called? The Blue Jays?
Oh no, the Jayhawks.
Jayhawks. Sorry,
Kansas Jayhawks.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just had a travel bug that I just couldn't get rid of, and I wanted an adventure as part of it. I didn't just want to go to Europe and travel around on a train. I wanted something to happen.
That was very popular, folks, listeners. That in the 1970s and 80s, people, college kids would backpack around the world, maybe Asia or Europe, depending on your. And they would. There was the Euro Pass. You could get on a train and buy one of these and go to 5 different countries in 2 weeks or whatever.
Yeah, and that was fine. I had nothing against that at all. Right. It was just that I wanted, an adventure.
You wanted to,
and I saw the Coast Guard as that pass.
So you thought you would go upriver like the Heart of Darkness?
Exactly. And so it was a really great training program.
All right.
Because that search and rescue element is what enticed me to go.
All right.
And so my first station was in Fire Island, New York, which is on the south shore of Long Island. And it was a small boat station. And so we were doing search and rescue right off the bat. I mean, the day I landed, we were out looking for somebody who was lost, whose boat got overturned.
Now, these would have been pleasure boats, probably.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we were just in the thick of it right then and there. But then also the drug smugglers were coming up to New York.
That far north.
Yeah, so what would happen is they would have these, what they call the motherships. And the mothership would come up with whatever. And then they would have these, what do they call them, cigarette boats. And they're these fast motorboats,
right?
That would
speed.
Come in and out of all the inlets along Long Island, and we would get intelligence to go out and look for these guys. And so we would sit in Fire Island Inlet, all day long,
waiting for them
to come in. And I'll tell you one little story that we had been waiting for this all day long. And they said, you're relieved to go back to the station and have dinner. And so while we're sitting at dinner, we're looking out, our view onto the whole of the Great South Bay.
Right.
We had a bridge that we could see out our window. And we're sitting there eating. And suddenly somebody says, fire. And we're like, what? And they're like, fire underneath the bridge. And we look out, and there's this boat on fire. And so we have our primary mission is search and rescue.
Right.
So we get back in the boat, we go across, we put out this fire. There's nobody there on the boat.
All right.
There's nothing going on inside the boat. The boat's on fire.
But there's nothing inside.
But all of a sudden, we look and we see these boats going by us.
Oh, it's a distraction.
So it's a distraction. They set a boat on fire. We have to go do that. We can't stop boats and search their vehicles.
So, but other Coast Guard vessels further down.
They weren't there.
South.
We were there. That was us.
So that must have been very annoying.
It was quite frustrating.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was but there was a lot of search and rescue in that area for that time. Well, it's still going on today, I'm sure.
Okay. We, during that time period, there was a TV show called Miami Vice that made all of this world of drug smuggling and boats and, Colombia, and it made a very sexy TV crime show.
Yeah.
And these police officers weren't driving old junky cop cars. They were driving these high-priced sports cars.
Yeah, and wearing fancy suits.
Fancy clothes, and they were hardly a police officer.
Yeah, no, there was nothing real about that.
And no, obviously not. And it was a big hit. Oh, my gosh, if you ever get a chance to watch any of this. And the theme song was by, Oh my
I
gosh!
never got a chance to watch it. So
you never saw it.
No,
okay.
I was busy fighting the good fight.
You were Well, I want to back up a little bit. Joseph Conrad, he was the writer that was in Africa, right? And he wrote books about.
So he was a Polish writer.
Polish writer,
but
right.
he had been out on different missions and stuff.
He was a medical guy, right?
Yeah, he was.
Right. So they would go upriver and help a village or whatever, and he would see this, what we call the dark side of humanity, humans. And one of the most legendary books was a Heart of Darkness.
Right.
And it is what we call a dark adventure story. He goes upriver, and as he goes upriver, he sort of goes back in time, as humans go, human behavior.
Yeah, it became much more primitive where he was going. So he was with a missionary type of, what was it?
Christian group or
something like that. And well, it was like a British imperialist and that sort of thing.
Right.
And they get separated from the modern world that they had come from.
Slowly, as the book goes forward.
Yeah, but they get into this primitive world, and it becomes, more than he can take.
Yeah. It later was made into a movie called Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
What did you think of that film?
It was...
they get the setting right, the whole imagery.
As far as Vietnam and that?
No, I don't care about Vietnam.
Oh, okay, just as far as
I really didn't think it was a Vietnam movie anyway.
No, right. I think it got the mood of Heart of Darkness.
Yes. If you ever get a chance to watch Apocalypse Now, there are characters in that straight out of the book. And even though everyone thinks it's a war movie about Vietnam, it really is not.
Right. It's about the
adventure.
Somebody who comes from a modern perspective who gets lost in this primitive world.
Right. And he doesn't know himself anymore.
Right, he doesn't, exactly.
And it's sort of what we call a birth-rebirth story, which is very common in American literature, Western literature, where you're born, you die, and you're reborn.
Yeah.
This is a common theme.
Reinvention of oneself. Yeah.
It's nothing like the Chinese heroes, like Bruce Lee, who they don't go through that stage. Asian hero narratives are never...
Oh, really? I can't say I know anything about that, but in that respect.
Yeah, there's some great books on this if you ever get a chance to see the difference in archetypes of the hero adventures. But obviously now it's not going to be the Heart of Darkness for you. You're not no chance to go upriver.
No, not like that.
No, you didn't get...
I met some crazy characters.
Oh, my God. In the Coast Guard or just
both.
In bars?
Inside and out,
I'm sure there are plenty of pubs, you pull into a harbor or port, and the bar would be full of...
actually, okay, you reminded me of something. So one of my billets was...
What's a billet?
It's where you're stationed.
Right, okay. And that's a military term.
It's a military term for where you are now stationed at.
So if you're based in Kaohsiung Navy, that's your billet.
Yeah.
Navy base.
So I got assigned to the Coast Guard cutter Tamaroa.
Tamaroa. Is that an Indian name or French?
Yeah, it is.
Or American Indian?
American
That's
Indian.
very common in America.
And
how big? What's the tonnage on that one?
It was a 210-foot fast attack tug donated to the Coast Guard by the U.S. Navy.
Okay.
It was commissioned for the Navy back in the 30s.
Oh, my God.
So by the time I got on it was, 1984.
Oh, my God.
And, it was an old... So we had a...
the kill is the main bottom... Kill is probably 1930s.
Oh, that's way deep.
That's scary.
It was
that's the scary
part. We were a tugboat, basically. And so, anyway, One tour we did was down in the Caribbean. So what would happen?
Oh, that's gotta be fun.
It was fun, but it was a long trip out of. So it was based out of New York, out of Governor's Island, New York City.
All right.
And we had to go all the way down to the Caribbean on this thing that didn't go, but
So it's a slow move. It's a slow drive, and it's a comfortable drive.
Yeah.
Well, you get to pull in every night.
Oh, yeah. No, not every night. No.
But you get to pull in at certain.
We pulled in a couple of 3 times.
Probably favorite places everyone knew about.
I think we went to Key West.
Oh wow.
We went to the Grand Cayman Islands.
Oh.
And we also went to Jamaica.
Okay.
So that was a pretty good trip. Jamaica had that Heart of Darkness aspect to it.
Back then it would then.
We were swarmed by people as we approached the dock, and they were like all over us.
Oh my God.
But that was right during the reggae era of Bob Marley. I had just seen Bob Marley several years before that.
Bob Marley was a very famous Jamaican singer during the 1970s, promoting a very unique style of music, reggae music. There was an assassination attempt, I believe. Yeah. Someone shot him.
Yeah.
For political reasons, right?
Yeah.
Very strange.
He survived that, but he died of cancer several years later.
Okay. Yeah, he didn't live long. It's common American storytelling narrative that the great music people don't live very long in America. They seem to but they always die in a plane crash
or drug overdose.
A drug overdose. Plane crashes are part of the mythology of being a great music. But Jimi Hendrix had a drug problem, as did Janis Joplin, another very, I think basically the same year, right?
Yeah, there was several of them that died at the same time. And Jim Morrison.
Jim died in the bathtub, OD'd.
Yeah.
We don't know the details, drugs, obviously, alcohol. Yeah. Jim Morrison is one of the legendary music phenomenons. He produced something called The End, a song that's 8 minutes long that you never heard on the radio all the way. It was always 4 minutes because there were standards.
Iconic version used in Apocalypse Now.
Once again, if you want to watch Apocalypse Now, his music's used in the beginning and the end of the film. I thought, I was so stupid in 1979. I thought that the music had been made for the movie. I thought, who is singing this music? Because I grew up on country western, so I didn't have. I did have the Woodstock albums. I did have some of that hippie stuff, but boy, the serious rock stuff, I was still kind of naive. A little bit of Rolling Stone, but not this. Yeah. But once again, so you were down in Drug City. This is where all the drugs are being
in Jamaica. You mean
Jamaica, the Caribbeans? The Caribbeans were these. They even had an island that was, the military couldn't even touch. Right, a famous island down there that was owned by someone that no one could enter.
I don't know about those.
It's been in a few films.
Really?
Yeah. But anyway, cocaine was just out of control in the 1970s. Yeah. In 1960s, we had our marijuana, of course, which is a very light drug. And, of course, psychedelic drugs like LSD, which made you dream or see things that weren't there. It could be a fun trip, or it could be a very unusual, dark visit. But things have changed. Now drugs kill you, like fentanyl in America. Something. I think fentanyl is the number one killer of men in America now. That's incredible. I don't know how that happened. So America's changed. But anyway, Bob Marley. You're down there, and you're in Bob Marley land. All right. And he was probably on every T-shirt down there.
Well, and everybody wanted to be Bob Marley. Yeah,
he's a success story.
Yeah, and I remember one night we had a ship thing at this local, I guess, resort motel, and I went out to a beach and just by myself to smoke a cigarette, because I used to smoke cigarettes back then.
Okay.
And I'm walking down the beach, and this guy comes walking up, and he's a security guard. And he goes, "What are you smoking?" And I'm like, "Oh, just a cigarette."
Marbles.
And he's like, "Oh." And then he realizes I'm not smoking a joint.
Okay.
And so he goes, "I'm a singer." And he starts singing me some song, And I'm like, "Oh, this is really impressive,
Everyone's a singer.
He's thinking that I'm like a producer or that I can make him famous or something.
You're white.
Like,
maybe you're here looking for
I'm on the ship and we're leaving tomorrow,
I'll recommend you in New York when I get back. Bob Marley, once again, you should check out his music because it's still a very popular style of music in America.
Very much so.
And he is listened to quite often on the radio stations in America. So
I'm very lucky I got to see him live.
You saw him live where exactly?
Back in Lawrence, Kansas, at the University of Kansas.
Right.
And it was one of the best shows I think I've ever seen.
Wow.
That's no hyperbole at all. That is straight up.
Yeah. He... I never really listened to him, but I had friends that were just constantly, you were just in love with him, and either you weren't or you were,
right.
I think. But what adventures beyond that? Any scary? You're in drug country now.
Well, so again, the primary mission of the Coast Guard is search and rescue.
Right.
So it was also fishery patrols up in the Grand Banks of North Atlantic, off of the coast of
dangerous area, right?
Canada and New England. So we would go out and patrol that area to just, we were doing search and rescue, and we were also doing boardings of these fishing boats to make sure that they were in compliance with the types of fish they were catching or however many fish they were catching, what nets they were using, that sort of thing.
Plus the safety equipment.
Safety equipment.
Right.
And so we would do these boardings, and, we had to rescue boats. And if you ever saw the movie Perfect Storm, that Coast Guard ship was my ship.
Okay.
I had left, 2 years before that.
Oh, my God.
But that is the area that we were. That movie was the Coast Guard cutter Tamaroa's life. That's what we did.
That was a scary one.
That was a scary movie, and that was a scary life. I mean, we would go out in these waters, and we would see waves that were 30 to 50 feet high all the time.
Right.
And we would, we would go to sleep, and we would have to stand watch, in the middle of the night.
Sure.
And I would always volunteer to take the mast. I would want to be outside.
Why?
Because being inside is even more
scary. You hit your
more
head,
frightening. You don't know what's coming.
You don't know if this is the last wave.
I'm looking at the waves. I can see, okay, and I could yell down to people, okay, brace for this one. And I'd be throwing up over the side of the ship.
Oh.
But I was better off there than being down below.
You weren't afraid of electrical, storms where you could get...
We didn't really have those. They were, because it was
lightning
cold.
Strikes.
No, that happened down south.
Okay.
And no, it was up north. It was cold. We were wearing what they called Mustang suits, those full body suits.
Full body.
And,
they still didn't give you much.
Kind of locked onto the mast.
Right.
And just watching in the middle of the night, here comes a wave,
Probably have nightmares at night.
And you're just going back and forth and front and back, and holding on to your food. I'm sure some of these sailors out there had that experience.
I took a Coast Guard vessel from Matsu to Donging Island, and the trip during the day, sunlight was fine, but at night it was a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking that the waves would disappear in front of you. You would be inside.
Yes.
Inside, you look up, look in front of you, and it just is gone.
Now you're going down with it.
And here you go, and boom.
Boom.
And the guys were laughing, which
they've been doing this for
and I was hanging on to these these poles above me, thinking, "Wow, if you fell off, even with what kind of suit was this again?"
They called it the Mustang suit. It's basically, it had a flotation device built into it, but it was really to keep you warm and dry or drier, not dry, but drier. And you'd put it on over your uniform, and you'd zip it all the way up, and it was bright
orange.
It was bright orange, and it also had a light attached to it, so that in case you did go overboard, it'd be blinking, and you'd have a straw to suck air out of, and it was.
But in a major storm, you can just forget it, right? I mean, it's just.
Yeah, I mean, if you went overboard in one of those major storms, they're not going to find you. No way.
Yeah, I know that I've seen the TV shows, Lobster Trap TV Live.
I don't know.
They have the TV shows where they go up north in Alaska and these boats.
I know what you mean.
And they have these suits on. But they're not going to. They said 15 minutes was the longest they could survive.
Probably,
even
especially in those waters.
In those waters. Yeah. Wow. I don't know how much you would have to be paid to go out there to do something like that.
Yeah, that's hard work.
Were you married during this time period?
No. I intentionally didn't really go after getting a girlfriend because I was afraid of that. I did have a couple of girlfriends, but I didn't really. Because I did know guys that would get married, and I just thought, this isn't the life where I want to be married.
Yeah, there's the constant worry and the letters, and we didn't have email back then. We had phone calls and
letters.
And yes, so you were down there for how long?
You mean in the Coast Guard in general?
The Caribbean.
Oh, so we would just go down for a month or so. What we would do is relieve the bigger vessels. That was their job. So they would go in for dry dock or just needed, a couple of weeks off, and they would send this fast attack tug down there.
Okay. Fast attack tugboat. He's making a joke.
No, that's actually what it was called.
It's a tugboat, but a fast attack.
That was made for, hauling bigger vessels back during World War II.
Oh, yeah. It was an old vessel.
And so it was left over and, donated to the Coast Guard.
Given away.
And they were actually very good vessels to patrol the North Atlantic in. Because they could take these big waves and, like you said, comfort level, I say with italics. But for that reason, they were a good boat. But going down and chasing drug vessels or drug smugglers in the Caribbean, we were there just to let people know the Coast Guard was still on patrol.
Did you ever catch a drug boat? Did you ever?
Not in our boat.
Okay. All right. So there's just nothing like the movies and TV news and everything said during the time. We can't stop.
Yeah, you can't stop.
The cocaine.
But our boat was not the boat to do that.
All right.
There were boats that did that, and they did a good job, but not us.
Were you armed, the boat?
Oh, we were armed. We had what did we have? We had machine guns. We had, I want to say 50 millimeter.
50 is about right for a ship. Yeah.
And
okay.
So, and then there,
that can get somebody's attention.
And we had, for sure. And when we had rigid hull inflatable boats to chase anything that we'd needed for,
Yeah, these rigid inflatable boats now are, you see U.S. SEALs, Special Forces, using these types of boats.
I'm sure they're on the Coast Guard boats here in Taiwan.
Yes, they have them. Yes, and they also use them. I'll see them also at fire departments.
Yeah,
because they have a lot of
very versatile
typhoons.
Boats. And so you can put on a big engine and really get going pretty quickly on those.
So you haven't. So you were there in the Caribbean, and then sadly you had to leave these beautiful islands.
Yeah.
And go where?
Back up to the North Atlantic.
Oh my God.
North Atlantic. So then the boat got re-signed from Governor's Island, New York, to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And that was really beautiful. I mean, I got to say, that was one of my favorite places to be stationed.
Because of New Hampshire itself?
Because of New Hampshire itself. New Hampshire, Maine, it was
in really the autumn?
Cool. Yeah, all year round.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, I you hear about these, we call them the original 13 states, and you hear about Vermont being this beautiful place, but nobody wants you to move there.
Right. New Hampshire.
They don't want to ruin it with. So, are they friendly?
I found it to be quite friendly.
Okay.
It was 40 years ago, so I can't comment on what it's like today.
Yeah, of course not.
I mean, I'm an old man. So.
No. Well, as I am too. I don't, we both grew up exactly almost by a year, the same time period. So we remember the same TV shows, the limitation on what you could watch because we didn't have cable till we were in the mid-1970s maybe.
Well, I didn't have it till in the 80s.
Yeah, maybe, possibly, Cable changed the world. We
sure.
had broadcast. We had 4 TV stations.
Yeah.
And if we had 4 if we could get, the 4th one was a little hard. We had to kind of like, people think this is silly, but we had to grab the antenna and stand funny.
Yeah. So true.
My father would say, "Okay, move your arm up to the left."
And if there was a storm, electrical storm or something, knock your antenna off your house.
Oh yeah. We had to put these things up on top of our houses, and the children were always the ones that had to climb up these things because they had a sort of a ladder style to them, and. You wouldn't dare do that to your children today in America. The children are considered, the neighbors would call the police on you. So, and we were talking about this earlier about growing up in America in the 60s and 70s. I walked to school. In the 1st grade, after a few trips with my mother walking, and then thank God nothing happened. But sometimes children would disappear. But it didn't. We were a small town. Everybody knew each other. So, but those days are over in America, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we have something called helicopter parents now.
Hovering over their children.
They drive them to school. They drive them straight back. They don't. That's called helicoptering, and we've allowed children to become too. I don't know. Afraid of the world. How would you describe it?
Wary, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. It's a dangerous world. Yeah. But I remember as young as 10 or 12 taking my father's rifle, 22, out to the.
I mean, mentioned earlier Mark Twain.
Sure.
I lived down by the river with a 22.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I did on my days.
We'd throw Coke bottles out there and shoot them.
Yeah, and I almost got shot.
Oh, sure.
By my friends.
Well, that's part of the experience.
But that was very, and we'd build rafts, and we would just cruise down the river
on a raft that you built out of wood.
Out of wood, and I loved Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn. I absolutely adored those stories.
Yeah,
and so I would live them as much as I possibly could.
Yeah, that was part of being American, is reading these books by. That was not his real name, though.
No, Samuel Clemens was his real name.
Yeah. Mark Twain was a phrase used to mark the depth of the river. Right. And he just adopted it as his pen name. Mm-hmm. But he also did journalism as well. Right. And many of his journalistic stuff were quite exciting, actually. Hardly children's books.
Right. Oh, yeah. No, that was different stuff altogether. Yeah.
So he was a man of. He sort of became a character of himself.
Yeah.
He had his signature, as we call it. His signature is the way you look. Mm-hmm. He had white hair, white mustache. He had a certain way of speaking. He wore a white suit, which was a very common Southern gentleman's style suit. And he had these wisdom. He was always saying something wise. Very famous. And in America, they'll have these people that dress up like him, and they go from community to community to community, and they'll give speeches. And they act just like him, and people love it.
Yeah.
It's part of what we call being an American or Americana.
Americana.
Right. Yeah. And what do you think about that today in America? Because, Taiwanese still see America a certain way, and yet when I turn on my YouTube, I see riots in Columbia University, Harvard, and tearing down statues of Teddy Roosevelt, and I find it very disturbing.
Yeah, it's not. Well, when I grew up, that was going on against the Vietnam War.
But it was the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
People had brothers that were dying over there, and this doesn't. I don't see any.
Yeah. No. Well, we can go in deep into that. But,
but if Taiwanese are going to college in America, they need to know what they're facing.
That people have strong opinions, and they're not afraid to show them. And it may not even be students, as they noticed in Columbia, that they were outsiders.
60% were not students, apparently, that they arrested.
Yeah, so
Yeah, it gives you the feeling that America's falling apart. I can assure the reader or listener, that America is not going to have a civil war, but there's clearly a generational shift in America that seems to be lost. Is that the phrase you would use? They don't know what they want. Yet they feel like they're entitled to everything.
Well, I think that's been going on for a long time.
Sure, yeah.
I feel like even my generation had that.
Yes, I definitely had that same attitude.
God. The phrase that. So I used to. Well, I still listen to a lot of punk music.
No, not you.
Yeah. And I don't know what I want, but I want it now.
Yeah, that's a famous lyric from The Clash, right? Or no, it was.
I don't remember who, but it could have been
not The Clash.
Almost any of them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It could have been The Jam. It could have been The Clash. It could have been Elvis Costello. It could have been many, many, many.
And if you go back further in the 1950s, there was the Rebel movie, Rebel Without a Cause. Yeah. And this pretty girl says, "What are you rebelling against?" And he says, "Everything."
Yeah.
And nothing.
Right. It's a nihilistic approach.
Nihilism is nihilism is a belief that there is no God, no future, nothing matters. You just do whatever you want to do. Therefore, you have nothing to live for. And nihilism is a very popular approach when you're young in college. Yeah. And then that's before you realize life is hard.
Yeah.
But you took the hard path. There's two paths, right? We always talk about the the different paths you take in life, right?
Yeah.
The high, the low.
Yeah.
So you took the struggle. You went to the adventure side.
I've always been enticed by adventure. 100%. I love adventure.
But you don't want to find a Kurtz, Colonel Kurtz at the end of your bicycle trip.
No, but I've had some strange people that I met along the way. Yeah, and that adds the spice of life to it. You know,
just get back on the bike. Keep going.
As long as I can keep moving. But yeah, I mean, I did have, like, in my hitchhiking experience, there were some weirdos for sure. And I got out of them.
You're lucky.
Well, I'm lucky all along the way.
Yeah.
Honestly, I've had the best life because I've been lucky. Yes. And hope it keeps going.
Yeah, knock on wood is a phrase we use that means I can say I've been lucky all my life, but I have to knock on wood to make sure that I continue to be lucky. Yes. It's a common phrase, like you say, well, I've never had cancer, and then knock on wood. That means I don't want a cancer.
Yeah, right.
If you don't knock on wood, you'll get it.
Yeah, right.
It's a superstition in America.
It's a superstition.
But so you end up retiring or leaving the Coast Guard reluctantly or happily?
No. I was ready to go.
You were ready to get off the boat.
Yeah. 5 years I'd done that.
Didn't Joseph Conrad say, "Don't get off the boat" or "Get out of the
boat"? That was the chef in Apocalypse Now, where he goes and he meets the tiger.
Yeah, he goes to the jungle looking for. He goes to the jungle.
Never get off the boat.
Never get off the boat. Never get off the boat. He's looking for mangoes.
Yeah, he's looking for mangoes.
And he runs into a tiger, and he goes nuts, trying to get away from this thing. What he's met is what we call primordial, the primordial, which is the caveman fear.
Yeah.
So we don't, the only times I've ever felt that scared is in water. Where I felt something swim by,
right, yeah.
And I thought, is this just a big fish, or is this something that might eat me?
Yeah. Take me away.
Take me away. Those are we call primordial fears that we rarely experience anymore. So you're getting ready to go home. Are you all packed?
Now?
Yeah. When are you
I've had a lot of these I'm getting ready to go home moments in my life.
Do you still have a house back there?
Yes, we do. We have in Portland, Oregon.
And it hasn't been no squatters?
No, we have rented it out.
I'm joking.
And exactly. That's something you got to keep it occupied, or else there's a good possibility in Portland, Oregon, especially to.
In America, we have a problem with if a house is empty, people will move into it.
Yeah.
Poor people, and they won't leave. Yeah. And the laws in America can sometimes be in their favor. Yeah. They have a fake lease or mortgage or whatever. It's all fake, and the police, it might take years to get them out.
That's right.
And so they now have squatter teams. They hire companies that go in and get rid of squatters, and they're very good at it. They have these tricks they can use, and it's turned into a business. Mm-hmm. It's quite strange. So you got a house ready. You're going to go back. Mm-hmm. Your daughter is going to get her driver's license. Yeah. Now in Oregon, that is a driving. You have to take a course.
Yeah, she'll have to go through, driver's ed.
Driver's education. Now, is that offered in high school, or is that something?
I don't know, actually.
Because I went through high school.
Yeah, me too. But nowadays, I think it's become a business where they teach it outside of school.
Yeah, okay. So I got mine at 15. That was a training.
Yeah, right.
You had to have your parent with you.
You lived in a rural area.
Well, we were driving since we were 13 or 14.
Yeah, right. I drove my mom's car into a tree when I was 11.
That's a remarkable feat.
Yeah, it was.
I was driving down a gravel
High speed.
road about that same time and just barely missed a tractor. A Volkswagen Beetle.
Wow.
Yeah, and I would have been killed probably for sure.
Yeah.
But cars and vehicles, whether it was a tractor or a truck, didn't mean much to us.
Right.
We had a clutch. We knew the gears.
Yeah.
We would just take it.
Yeah.
But I had a friend who stole his father's old junky car, and we were driving through the woods, literally through the woods.
Right.
And we got it wedged between two trees.
Oh, man.
And we couldn't get it out of the trees. It was a disaster. We had to get his father.
Yeah.
He brought the tractor back and pulled it out of the two trees.
Yeah.
He says, how can I call the insurance company? How do I explain this? It was an old junkie. He was just making us feel worse. It had no insurance on it. Right. Absolutely none, I think he was having a good laugh as well. Yeah. Thank you, Judd, for so much.
Oh, my pleasure. It's been great to go over my experience here.
Yeah, my listeners love to hear new voices, new experiences. And hopefully you have a safe trip going home.
Yeah, I hope so, too. I'm taking 2 dogs with me, so that's...
2 dogs and a wife and daughter.
Yes.
You mentioned the dogs without mentioning
Well, they're going separately. That's why it's my responsibility to take the dogs home.
There's an old joke in America where you send your kid to summer camp and he comes home and the house is gone, so does somebody else, and the parents are missing, and they've dumped you.
But we got the dogs.
You got the dog. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.